You know, when we talk about the damage from illegal gold mining from Galamsey, our minds usually go straight to the things we can see. But today, we're going to look past all that. We're going to uncover the true, hidden price, and it's a price that isn't measured in money, but in human cost.
The story almost always starts right here, doesn't it? With these images that have become so familiar. You see the excavators just tearing up the earth, these massive, muddy pits scarring the landscape. And the rivers that were once the source of life, now they're just choked and brown, filled with sediment and poison.
But what if this is only the surface? What if the real story, the one with the deepest consequences, actually begins right where the camera usually pans away from the machines and toward the homes and the families that are living in the shadow of all this?
So let's get into it. The core idea we really have to wrap our heads around is this. An environmental crisis is never, ever neutral. It just doesn't affect everyone in the same way. The deepest hits are almost always taken by the people we see the least.
This right here really lays it out. The public conversation, all the news reports, they focus on the visible actors, right? The male miners, the big yellow machinery. But the people truly bearing the burden, well, they're largely invisible. It's the women, the children, and the communities whose entire lives are being quietly and completely reshaped by the fallout.
So how does this actually play out on the ground? Well, let's start with the immense weight that gets placed directly on women's shoulders. We're going to see how all this environmental damage gets converted directly into more work, more stress, and way less opportunity for them.
It's such a direct and devastating chain reaction. When your local river gets poisoned, the basic work of just running a household becomes exponentially harder. All of a sudden, women have to walk so much farther, sometimes for hours, just to find a clean source of water for their families to drink, to cook with, to wash.
And this quote, this just captures the human reality of that struggle perfectly. This is not some abstract problem we're talking about. It is a daily, physical, exhausting task. It's the quiet, unpaid, unacknowledged labor of trying to make something unsafe, safe, to literally try and turn poison back into life.
So here's the crucial takeaway. The destruction of farmland, the pollution of water, that damage doesn't just vanish. It gets converted into more unpaid, invisible work that falls squarely on women. They lose their farms, they lose their income, they lose their time, and all the while, their work at home just gets harder and harder.
And this is where the story gets even heavier. Because this burden, it doesn't stop with the women. It ends up shaping the entire future of the next generation. There is a silent crisis unfolding for the children in these communities, and it's hitting their health and their education.
Okay, so mercury. It's a key part of this type of mining, and it's a powerful neurotoxin. It seeps into the water, into the fish, into the whole food chain. For pregnant women, this means a terrifyingly higher risk of tragedy. For kids, whose bodies are still growing, it means the risk of lifelong cognitive damage. And of course, when people get sick from this, who bears the burden of caring for them? The women. Again.
The threat isn't just physical, though. There's an economic pull that is just as powerful, maybe even more so. I mean, just think about this question for a second. What happens in a community when a teenager, a 16-year-old, can make a teacher's entire monthly salary in a single week? How is education supposed to compete with that?
The whole system of what a community values gets turned on its head. The long-term promise of staying in school starts to look foolish compared to the immediate cash you can get from the mining pits. So kids drop out. They trade a sustainable future for what the source material calls instability disguised as opportunity.
And the impact just keeps rippling outward. It goes beyond individual homes and families, and it threatens to unravel the entire social fabric of a community. We're talking about the slow erosion of traditions, of safety, of the stability that has held these places together for generations. And at the heart of this unraveling is a really terrible paradox. It's called dependency. The community becomes economically trapped, and it's forced to rely on the very same activity that is poisoning its land, poisoning its water, and poisoning its own people.
This slide just lays out that impossible choice so clearly. On the one hand, Galamsey completely destroys traditional ways of making a living, like farming. But on the other hand, the income it provides becomes, for so many, the only option left to survive. It's a vicious cycle, where the problem itself pretends to be the solution.
And right alongside that economic trap, you have all these rising social costs. The influx of new people can lead to more violence. Ancestral traditions that are deeply tied to the land get fractured.
And a constant, collective anxiety just settles over the community, a fear for their children's safety, a fear for the future of their home.
So, as we start to wrap this up, let's try to really measure the true price of this gold. Because it's not just the market value, it's the invisible weight that it carries, a weight that is borne by the most vulnerable people.
The true price? It's measured in the lost hours of a woman's day. It's measured in the health risks to a child before they're even born. It's in the abandoned classrooms. It's in the pervasive fear. And, ultimately, it's in the quiet, steady erosion of a nation's entire future potential.
You know, the public conversation is always focused on solutions, right? How do we stop this? But after looking at all of this, maybe we need to start with a much more fundamental question, a question of justice. Why is it that the very people who see almost none of the profit are the ones forced to pay the highest price? That, right there, is the question at the very heart of this entire issue.